Hi guys, it's Katie Harris, owner and CEO of Nursepreneurs, and I'm usually here with Jill for our Innergame coaching and discussion, but Jill's having some connectivity issues. So what I'm going to do is just talk about what we were going to talk about, which was jumping from niche to niche. And I think it's a very apropos conversation because we have several students in our own programs, and we certainly love to see people enjoy our programs, but they'll jump from one to the next to the next to the next, and a lot of that has to do with not having clarity with what you want yet. And so I would say that the first step in any type of business venture is to really find that clarity for yourself of what it is that you want to do. And it sounds really kind of like, yeah, I know that, I get it, I know that I'm supposed to do that. But it's something that you do have to look inside and say, okay, what is it that would make me happy to do on a long-term basis? And I've certainly been through several iterations of this myself in my business, just knowing that there are certain things that I had to do to get the business running, but once it was up and running, knowing that I could shed some of that, so I didn't have to do it all the time. But one of the mistakes I made early on was I would jump from niche to niche to niche. So I would start out in something, get so far with it, spend a certain amount of money with it, and then realize, I didn't know what to do next. And then the perfect example of this was I started a direct primary care model back in 2013. So I've been a nurse practitioner for the last, I graduated in 2004 from nurse practitioner school. So I've been a nurse practitioner since then. It's going to go on 20 years pretty soon. Oh my God. But anyway, so I was a nurse practitioner. I thought, all right, one of the things that I could do is a membership model nurse practitioner program. And that it was pretty revolutionary at the time. In 2013, I don't even know how I came across the idea of direct primary care. I'm not even sure I knew there was that term. I just thought it would be great to have my own panel of patients. And if I had, let's say, 500 patients in my program, and they were each paying $100 a month, right? So for the membership, and that's a pretty standard $100 a month membership fee. And they would get unlimited access. They would get labs, exams, all these things. So that part of the model was good. And then I would sit there and calculate, well, if I had 500, that would mean I'd make $50,000 a month. And if I get 600, then I would have $60,000 a month. And I got 601, just kind of that fantasy math and going back and forth with all the money that I could make if I could do this. So I set forth into the direct primary care model. And there were a couple things that side railed me, and that's what I'll tell you about. And one of the first ones was after I had come up with this idea to do direct primary care, I came across this business. I think it's called R Health or R2 Health, and they were right there in the Philadelphia area where I was. And so my first thought was, oh, well, I can't do it. Somebody else is doing direct primary care. They beat me to the market. I'll never, this will never go anywhere. But then I kind of got over it, and I was like, all right, well, let me look and see what they're doing. And I can model a lot of the stuff that I want to do because there wasn't any kind of there is no like precedence for it aside from this one business that I could find. So I used that as a model to find what I wanted to do. Then, and this would have been 2014. So right around there, 2014, Walmart came out and said, we're going into basically the direct primary care model. And once again, I was like, oh my gosh, Walmart's going into direct primary care. There's no way I can compete with Walmart. They have 1 billion, whatever, shoppers. And how am I going to compete on that level? So ironically, and that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. I'm like, all right, so I'm not going to do direct primary care because this company is already existing. Not that they certainly weren't servicing the entire Philadelphia area. They had like one office. But that was a derail, and then the Walmart was a derail. And I just kind of threw my hands up, and I'm like, oh, I guess I can't do direct primary care. Which, if Jill was here, she'd be laughing because she would say that's, that's ridiculous. There's certainly a lot of room in the market. Walmart doesn't have every patient in the United States. So, but anyway, so once Walmart came into the picture and they said they were going to have these stores, what happened, ironically, was a couple months later, through a contact of mine, Walmart actually called me. It had nothing to do with my business, but they called me to see if I would work in their primary care division to help recruit nurse practitioners into their clinics. And at the time, they were just down south. So I ended up doing that and worked corporate for some years doing that, but it also kind of derailed that whole project. So then I was like, oh, well, I'm definitely not doing this business now. But at the same time, I didn't want to completely give it up. So I kind of said, all right, well, if I'm not doing direct primary care, because now I'm working for Walmart and these two entities already exist, then I'll do something easier and I'll do IV hydration. So I built out the entire IV hydration model. And then, when it came, I even bought the supplies. I bought like 10,000 brochures, which I don't know if you know what that looks like, but literally my neighbors probably were like, oh my God, what is this girl doing? Because the UPS or FedEx or whoever it was literally brought, if there were like 20 boxes outside of my house full of brochures. And so I took the brochures, brought them inside. And so all I had to do was distribute these brochures. And I found about 16 reasons not to distribute these brochures. And I actually had a friend who was like, oh, I'll put some out. So he and his son went and put brochures out. And I didn't get any calls for it. So then I said, oh, well, I guess this isn't going to work. But now that I'm working for Walmart, maybe I'll start a blog and I'm going to monetize this blog. And so then I jumped from literally direct primary care. I jumped to IV hydration. And then I jumped to basically content writing within the span of less than a year. And each one of these businesses I was trying to start up from scratch on my own because I didn't know anybody else that was doing anything like this. So that gets very expensive, first of all. But second of all, the real point here is that any one of those niches, any one of those businesses could have been great. And, the IV hydration in particular, about 5 years later, another IV hydration business came into Philadelphia and they kicked butt with it. They were doing awesome. It's easily a 6-figure business that's running out of there. So I was years ahead of that and just didn't follow through. And that's a big part of, when you're niche hopping, it's not that sometimes that you don't find the perfect business. It doesn't have to be the perfect business, just like it didn't have to be the perfect first house or the perfect, spouse or the perfect whatever. There is no perfect, right? There is a framework, and then you mold it into what it is that you want it to be. And even the business that I have now, it wasn't the perfect business when I started it. It's evolved and it's changed, but I had to start somewhere. And to be honest, the only reason I actually started and continued the business was because of my history of jumping from niche to niche to niche. When I finally did start Nursepreneurs, which wasn't called Nursepreneurs at the time, but the first iteration of it, my brother was like, oh, well, I wonder how long you're going to keep this business until you give up. And that really just kind of pissed me off, to be honest. I was really mad that he said that. So I felt like I was going to show him that I was going to do something to show him that I could do it. So that's when it was then that I started investing in coaches. Oh, and we have Jill here. She may or may not get in. It looks so nice and sunny out there. All right. Well, I think we're just going to see Jill and not hear her because I don't think she's getting good connectivity. But if she does pop one, that would be great. But otherwise, it's one of those things that, again, like I said, the going from niche to niche to niche is very problematic because you can't get the traction that you need. Very rarely have I ever seen like the business take off within a couple of weeks. We've certainly had some superstar case studies that put their business together and started making money in the first 3 months, but even then, it wasn't enough to they didn't double, triple their income and leave. So one of my students who now 2 years into it just resigned completely from her full-time job. She was able to do that, and she was one of them that started out and did very well from the get-go. She did very well from, when she went from idea to income generation within 6 weeks. And that was really, really impressive. But it's also anomalous, so it doesn't always happen quite that easily. It helps if you have something that people really, really want and they're already asking you for it, which is something that you should be doing. And that's what, again, Nursepreneurs came out of that. Like I had, because I had my MBA and I've started a lot of businesses, previous businesses, people would ask me and I put together a little meetup and we would talk about ideas and put stuff together, and several businesses actually generated out of that. And I was like, well, I like doing this. This is something that I could see myself doing. And that's where that concept came from. But yeah, so again, back to, like I said, my brother was actually that source that helped motivate me because I needed that kind of negative feedback, which was just him reflecting me back to me, and knowing that I really had to dig my heels in and stick with one concept. The concept can evolve, but I couldn't go, I literally went from direct primary care to IV hydration to content writing. And in my mind, there was a logical flow, but that's not a logical flow, right? Like you shouldn't be jumping from space to space to space. For content writing, I don't even like writing. So, that's, it wasn't a reasonable business for me to be in. So, sometimes you just need to find out what you don't want and what you don't like. And that's just as important. But, so I found out pretty quickly that's not what I wanted. Then I was also looking at the nurse practitioner, because that was one of my academic areas of study, but, how to help nurse practitioners transition from new grad into practice. And that was another area of that was really, I was keen on to fix. And it was just another one of those projects that I started and it didn't go anywhere because I didn't stick with it. And the other thing is that I didn't hold myself professional to it, right? It was a very amateur attempt. Like, I'll just kind of tweak some stuff. Maybe I'll write a blog post here and there. Maybe I'll make a few comments and see if anything comes of it. And you cannot start your business that way. If you have a problem that you want to solve, if you have an audience that you're talking to, then you need to show up, and you show up whether there's people there, there's no people there. You show up on rainy days and snowy days, and you set your schedule. You decide how many times you're going to do something, and you just keep showing up. And that's what it means to really kind of dig your heels in and make sure that it happens. You should be talking to your audience every single day, and that, whether it's in person or it's via email or in Facebook groups, whether it's your Facebook group or somebody else's Facebook group, you really need to be talking to people every single day. And that you'll eventually find. And, I think sometimes we just want somebody to hand us the great idea, but, if there were a bunch of generic great ideas, they wouldn't be great ideas, right? So you have to really listen to what your audience is saying and understand what it is that they're really trying to say. And that's it's very superficial what they're going to tell you, because they'll say, "Oh, the Henry Ford example is when if you ask people what they wanted back in the early or late 1800s, they would have said, we want faster horses. But that's not what they want. What they wanted was to be able to get from point A to point B faster. And it's not the horse that matters, right? It's the mechanism of how you get there. So that's the underlying want or desire that they have, is to get from point A to point B faster. And the solution, which is the horse, is irrelevant. We don't need a faster horse. We don't need two horses. We don't need whatever. We need to get from point A to point B faster, and that became the car, and then the train, the plane, the spaceship, whatever, to get from point A to point B. So when your audience says that they want, they're exhausted, or they want, they wish they could sleep, or, they wish they didn't have pain or something, you have to look deeper. And I read this book one time, I'm trying to think who wrote it, and I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was, if you Google something called The 5 Whys, you'll find the book, but it's a way of really getting down to the emotional core. And you can do this with yourself, right? I did this several times with myself, in terms of, let's say you want to make more money. You say, I want to make more money. And then you say, why is that important, right? And, I want to make more money so that I can pay off debt. Well, why is that important? Well, if I didn't have debt, then I could spend money, sending going on vacation with my son. And why is that important? Because if I go on vacation with my son and it's just the two of us and we can hang out and enjoy each other's time. And why is that important? Because, if I don't spend time with him, then I will have, he's always playing video games, and then we'll have this disconnect. And so, but, you start to get down to a level where it hits you, right? It hits you in the core, and you're just kind of like, oh, so the real thing here is that I want to be more meaningful in my son's life. That's what I really want. It has nothing to do with wanting more money. And that's what you have to do with your audience, is listen to what they're saying superficially, and then get down to the core, and, really understand. And it really comes down to 3 things that people really, really want. And the categories, your big broad categories, are health, wealth, and love. They either want some sort of, wealth generator, whether it's more money, more return on investment, less taxes, or fewer taxes, or whatever it has to do with money. The other one is health, and this is where people will say, I just want to be more healthy. Well, what does that mean exactly? Does that mean you want to change your diet? Does that mean you want to exercise more? Does that mean you want to do meditation? Does that mean you want to spend more time outdoors? It's just too vague. So, kind of honing down on something very specific. Because if I said to you, I just want to be healthier, your solution might be a system that gets me 6-pack abs. And, I'm really not interested in 6-pack abs, especially at my where I am in my life. I'm not interested in 6-pack abs, but a lot of people are. Or buns of steel, like that just doesn't appeal to me. But those are ways to get healthier. So that's where, Jill she's awesome at doing that kind of messaging and helping our nurses to really hone in on what it is specifically that they're trying to help the audience with. So, all right. Well, I don't think Jill is going to be able to pop on. She is in a place where the internet is not working. Usually that's my problem down here in Mexico, but this week it's her. If you guys have questions or comments, you can certainly put them in the comments section. I'm happy to answer anything. But otherwise, I would sum up by saying that if you are niche shopping, you're going from idea to idea to idea. The problem isn't the niche, right? most of these niches can make money. And, we always find nurses that have put together a system that works and they're generating income. The problem that I've seen is that people try to do it very superficially, and it doesn't work like that. You really have to, again, dig your heels into the ground and stay put with what it is. Oh, there's Jill. She's still pretty shaky. But stick with it. Give something. If you're going to do something, give it a good 6 months. Like, really give yourself 6 months and dedicate it to that topic before you go into something new, before you start the second.
Make it happen.
There you are, Jill. Well, we kind of hear you. I'm going to remove her from the stream. Oh, there you are. Hi.
Trying
All right, she's gone. All right. Anyway, it's good to see her, but her internet is just too shoddy. But anyway, so that is just a recommendation. I mean, give yourself 6 months, set up a marketing runway for yourself where you tell people about your business. Don't give up, no matter what you do, for 6 months. Don't move on to the next shiny object. Don't move on to the next brilliant idea that you have. Put your brilliant ideas in a book and say, this is my later book. I'm going to get to them later, but let's focus on one really small idea, one really small concept, and do that for 6 months. I challenge you to do that, and I can almost promise you that you'll get some traction and see some response from it. All right, guys, good luck out there, and I will see you in our next episode.